As Plan International, we participated in the high-level dialogue on financing of education here in the African Union today. And it was a good opportunity to remind the African leaders that putting money into education is actually one of the best investments they can make for the prosperity and development of their countries. We also committed that replenishing the global partnership for education is very important, and that as an international organization we will actually advocate in donor nations to live up to their commitments and promises, particularly giving 0.7% of their GDPs for development cooperation, and make sure that 15% of that is actually given for education. It is not only about the amount and the quantity of money that is being invested, it's also the question where and what for do we need that money and what do we prioritize. And as Plan, we really stand behind the need to prioritize children who are most excluded, and particularly girls. Girls' education, we have still 90 million girls in Africa who are out of school, and we need strategies to reach the most marginalized, and we need cross-sectoral investments, because a lot of the barriers which keep girls out of schools are not necessarily to be addressed in the education sector itself. So we're talking about harmful practices like FGM, like early child marriages, and also the simple fact that many girls don't have clean toilets when they go to school. Primarily, the responsibility for financing education sits with the national governments. They have to find ways to raise the money, to tax their population, to tax their companies, and establish equal and equalitarian education systems which deliver high qualities to all children. The international community and Plan International as an NGO can collaborate in these efforts, can bring in best practices, can mobilize resources, can bring in technical resources and know-how, and share with governments who then can integrate that into their systems and scale it up. Referring to the lack of early childhood care and development systems, there are some small initiatives that are going on, but most countries have very low coverage in ECCD programs, so children only start schooling when they are 6 years old, whilst in many other countries around the world they start with 3 or 4 years, because there are preschool education systems in place which prepare them already for grade 1, and then they enter grade 1 already with a higher literacy and skills level, also language levels, and that actually propels them much faster into higher levels of quality of education. And if we don't do that in Africa, Africa will always lag behind, and we need to push internationally and nationally to actually make early childhood education a priority of these investment efforts. For the other international organizations and UN agencies, I think we have a very good opportunity to rally behind now established global goals. SDG 4 is definitely something we can all work together and pull together to achieve. Here in Africa, the CESA, the Continental Education Strategy, which the African Union has produced, is an excellent document, and I think we as civil society organizations can push from the bottom up so it becomes reality and is really implemented in the countries who have signed up to it. The point I was making was around one specific excluded group of children, which are children and girls who suffer from displacement, who are refugees or internally displaced groups as a consequence of violent conflicts. Ethiopia is definitely one of the major recipient countries of refugees here in the region and even globally, I would say. And it was really good to hear that the government has clear strategies and plans how to integrate children who are in refugee status into the education system. They actually provide the systems, provide the resources, and provide a political will to actually ensure that they are not left behind and they have a chance to education, which then can be beneficial for the country where they reside right now, or for the country to which they will go back in the future when the situation improves. This was a preparatory meeting for the replenishment conference for the global partnership for education, which will take place next week. And what we would have expected is actually a little bit more of direct pledges. We still hope that the African leaders will come to Dakar next week with a portfolio of investments they really want to make, Today we didn't hear too much of that. We heard a few good examples of what the governments who were represented are doing to integrate children, to push for girls' education, to address disadvantaged groups like refugees. But we did not hear really the pledges that they would increase their investment into the global partnership and increase their investment for the education systems in their own countries. So there's still a way to go.